Hi, I am back with another video. I know, predictable. Um, I am going to embark on some of the avenues that I was discussing in my last arbitrary interlude on here, kind of diversifying the kinds of videos I'm doing, the kinds of things I'm covering. Still just waxing off the top of my head about things I hold way too much useless ephemera in my noggin about. Uh, so yeah, not that big a change, just kind of branching out. Um, this one is going to be specifically about some incredibly hyped um, material. It's everywhere. It's utterly ubiquitous. So it's not really, fulfilling my usual uh, attempts to go down roads less trod, and kind of, etc. However, it is going to be my own unique take on this stuff, informed by many, many years of geekery. So I'm hoping you'll enjoy something about this, even if you don't particularly care for what I'm going to be covering, because you're sick of seeing it festooned about the internet as clickbait, endless, tireless clickbait on the fanbro sites like Screen Rant and Bleeding Cool and Comic Book Resources and IO9, and I'm sick of seeing all that personally. I try to glean what news I can from those sites because a lot of times they do have scoops. Uh, their actual content and their take on things is highly dubious to me, though, usually, beyond just basic news like XYZ film or TV series is dropping on this date. Okay, that's helpful, but then when they go on to why you should love it or why you should hate it, in these long, ponderous, tendentious, pedantic screeds, I tune out. Before I get into what I'm actually covering, I'll go ahead and just drop a few other off-topic bon mot, so to speak. I am listening to an incredible album by a band I've recently discovered. I'm going to read from their YouTube here about them. They're called Fusioon, Fusion. They're a Spanish progressive rock slash jazz rock slash Canterbury band from the 70s. They're from Spain, but Canterbury is evoking a Canterbury style of progressive rock, prevalent then, not the locale specifically. Okay, it goes on to say their first album, Fusioon, 1972, was instrumental, and I guess that means it was all instrumental, not that it was instrumental as in a key album, and focused on Manel Camp's keyboard abilities and shared similarities with Exception, Focus, and The Nice. The Nice was Keith Emerson's band before Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Their second album, also entitled Fusioon, 1974, not confusing, proved to be a major step forward, adding some Canterbury influences, including Egg, National Health, and Soft Machine. All killer bands, in my opinion. Their third and last work, Minorisa, 1975, was more complex and approached the music of Frank Zappa, King Crimson, and Gentle Giant. Zappa is, of course, God, and King Crimson is one of my top 5 favorite bands. Gentle Giant was one of the better kind of semi-mainstream progressive bands of that prog rock band. Minorisa is the album that I'm playing in the background. I don't know how much of it's coming through with the noise dampening thing where kind of whatever's loud tends to knock out everything else. It's kind of like I used to have a jam box like that, and it had a condenser microphone like that. So I used to tape chiaroscuro band practices on it. Sometimes if one instrument got super big and peaked, like a incredibly strong drum cymbal hit or a scream courtesy of yours truly, everything else would kind of get knocked out for a couple of seconds and then kind of swell back in. So it wasn't the best for, it wasn't equalized or anything. The old days, analog days. Anyway, I really enjoy this album. I mentioned on my last arbitrary interlude that I was going to do more stuff like this, covering material that I was listening to, albums and bands that I was like at the present really getting into on YouTube. So I'm going to continue doing that. This is like my practice run. So Fusioon, it's kind of a soft mellow part right now. I don't know if you can hear it. Don't know if you care. Don't know if I care. If you know if I care, if you care. Um, Also trying something a little different this time around in my video. I just got off work at the day job, and I am actually imbibing for the first time in a year and a half an adult beverage. Mike's Hard Strawberry Lemonade. Boy, I'm living on the edge. Didn't want to go to the ABC store and get too trash, though I do prefer liquor to other things. Kind of go for results when it comes to drinking. I'm going to go ahead and click out of the Fusioon bio here. But it's very enjoyable to listen to in the background while I explicate on what I'm going to explicate on. So, strains of prog. So while I'm, jamming out to Fusioon and some vocal parts came out, and also imbibing some substances of alcoholic nature, I'm going to go ahead and plunge in 7 minutes on into the meat of the video. So what I want to talk about, this may require some drinking here. Maybe a lot of it. I'm just very worn out. I also have a great announcement to make at the end of the video. Maybe by then I'll be smashed enough to be very inhibited about it. But in the interim, let me home in on the topic of the day. WANDAVISION. I know you're sick of seeing that word or combination of words. Beautiful instrumental break here in this tune. Maybe I should turn this up, but I can't from the remote's too far away now. Great guitar solo. So, WandaVision has been on everyone's lips, e-lips, electronic lips on the interwebs last several days. Disney Plus, of course, is who's broadcasting it. Naturally, it's hyped like mad. It might be slightly even more hyped at the moment than The Mandalorian, which I'm going to cover in an episode. I promised another new feature. I was going to cover some television series that I'm enjoying. For now, I'm going to probably call this like TV musings, or I don't know, something kind of lame like that. I might even title this one like episode 1 of TV musings. But I'm not going to cover Mandalorian tonight. I'm not going to cover any of the things I alluded to last time. I didn't think I was going to be able to see WandaVision upon its debut, but I want to give a shout out to my very good friend Tim Tolbert, who gave me some access to his Disney Plus subscription. And after watching repeated on a loop viewings of Tim Burton's Pinocchio, just kidding. That was a joke from Tim. Or was it Dumbo? Tim Burton's Dumbo. Is that like stop motion Dumbo with Henry Selick doing Dumbo? Seriously though, as soon as I logged on there with his credentials, I zoomed right into WandaVision episodes 1 and 2, which dropped the same evening, which was Friday, 2 days ago. All right, so what's the deal with WandaVision? Now, 10 minutes into the video, and we might actually start discussing what the title of the video is going to be about. I loved it. A little bit of personal background info and more adult beverages. Okay, so here's the deal. when I was a kid, way back, I was a big fan of the comic book The Avengers. And back then, the Marvel's covers used to have these little kind of postage stamp sized uh, drawings of the lead characters on the left corner. If it was a double lead, like Captain America and the Falcon, Daredevil and the Black Widow, I'm showing my age here, but fans of the Marvel movies will be down with what I'm talking about. It's taken 40 some years, but the world's caught up with me. Bless you, Marvel. So yeah, they would have like Daredevil on one side, the left, and Black Widow on the right, or Captain America on the left, Falcon on the right. The Avengers, being a team of many characters who had their own books, I mean, there was no point in having a little block with Thor, Iron Man, Captain America. They all had their own comics. So they had to go with a member who was only appeared in the Avengers. And they kind of decided early on that the emblematic, the paradigmatic, quintessential Avenger was the Vision. So the Vision would be kind of posed like this, very proud and stoic. And as a little kid, I drew pictures of him. I was about 2 years old. And I just kind of barely learned how to write. Not very well, but I couldn't read, but I would still look at the pictures. And sometimes my mom would read me the comics. Sometimes my grandmother, when she would stay with us, would read me the comics. She often read me Captain America comics and Doc Savage novels. Now, mind you, I was like 4 years old. Itching to learn how to read. And why? So that I could read Marvel comics. So anyone who says that comics weren't, good for literacy, anyone who says that is a fucking idiot. Let's just put all our cards on the table. They're a fucking moron. So anyway, with that invective out of the way, I loved the Vision. I didn't know he was called the Vision, and since he was on the cover of the Avengers, I thought his name was the Avenger. So I would draw pictures, badly scrawled pictures of the old android, and put Avenger, the Avenger. Didn't know there was a character called the Avenger, a pulp hero, though I did learn that not too much later. And I was like, how is Marvel letting this Avenger character be out? But his novels would be stacked next to the Doc Savage novels. The reason I got into the Doc Savage novels is because of Marvel. There was a comic book called Doc Savage that Marvel was publishing in issue 7. Forgot who did it. I have a collection of the whole series in trade. It's really great, nice stuff. Ross Andrew was the artist, and I liked him because he did Spider-Man back then. But this one's called Brand the Werewolf, and it was adapted from the novel Brand the Werewolf by Kenneth Robeson or Lester Dent. My Doc Savage, Philip A. Farmer, Walt Newton homies will know what I'm talking about here. Another shout out. So I thought it was cool, and that is how I got interested in 2 things: werewolves and Doc Savage. So my parents took me to this place called the Intimate Bookshop. That was the only cool bookstore in town, really. They were in a mall near us, the only real mall in town back then. And there I saw it, the novel Brand of the Werewolf up on the top shelf, Kenneth Robeson, Doc Savage, and Mom bought it for me, and my grandmother read it to me. I think my mom was having a surgery, like a hysterectomy or something. I mean, I hate to get like super intimate here, but so my grandmother took care of me for a couple of weeks, and she bought me tons of stuff and read me lots of stuff. This was a good time, really good time, and can't say that about all of my childhood at that time, but this was a good time, and she read me Brand of the Werewolf. So that was my initiation to Doc Savage and werewolves. And I noticed, of course, I didn't fail to notice that Marvel also had a comic book called Werewolf by Night. So shortly after that, I talked my mom or dad into buying me an issue of that. And it was creepy. It was with Tom Sutton art. Tom Sutton art is still creepy to this day. And they had a character later called Tatterdemalion, and he lived under the sewers. And boy, it was a moody issue. I have the complete essential Werewolf by Night in black and white reprints. And got that issue, and it looks even cooler in black and white. Tom Sutton is an underrated motherfucker of a comic book artist. Always has been. So what does all this have to do with WandaVision? Well, you know, it's all kind of part of my childhood Marvel. The Avengers, Vision. So I quickly took to this character who they called in the comics an android. Once I was able to read, or maybe my mom read to me that he was an android. And his girlfriend was the Scarlet Witch, Wanda. Wanda didn't have a last name back then. She was just Wanda. And I loved those two. Vision and Scarlet Witch, another classic couple like Daredevil and Black Widow, or, well, Captain America and the Falcon, but they were platonic as far as we knew. A lot of people insist Cap and Bucky have been going at it for decades, but that's fine. I always saw Cap as being with Sharon Carter, so I was happy when they kissed in Civil War movie. Cap and Bucky, yeah, though I could see he did lament Bucky's passing quite a lot. Falcon and him though, they were bros, man. They weren't hooking up. Falcon had a girlfriend called Leela. So anyway, the Vision of Scarlet Witch was one of these kind of emblematic, paradigmatic, quintessential Marvel duos that I grew up with. They had a passionate love affair. They were android and a mutant. I was barely old enough to begin to understand what an android or a mutant were. I know I asked my mom what they were. My parents are both very well-read people. They weren't comic collectors or anything. And my dad had dabbled in comics way back in the 40s when he was a little kid. But they explained to me as best they could. You know, they both liked science fiction, especially my dad. And this was the 70s. So paranormal phenomena and new agey kind of things and sci-fi cautionary movies. It was part of the zeitgeist. You know, it was a cool time, even though I wasn't old enough to truly appreciate how cool it was. Now I really do. Now I watch movies and read comics and books, and I listen to music. I time trip to the 70s, and it's just an amazing experience. So I loved the Vision and the Scarlet Witch. There's an Avengers issue, which I still have. Well, I don't have the original issue copy. It got ground up, as most of my books did. I just was rough on them. But I later, upgraded it. I still have it. I think it's issue 115, maybe 113, 115 of Avengers. And this crazy bigot squad called the Human Bombs, they decide that they don't like androids and mutants. You know, it's a big racist metaphor here. And so they decide to blow them up. I guess they figured that androids and mutants are tougher than humans, and they are. So they're going to blow the fuck out of them. Well, mainly they're going to blow up the Vision because they're intimidated by him. I mean, he's not human, and here he is fitting in with these mostly human group, the Avengers, and human people like him because he's a hero, and now he's having sex with a semi-human woman, a mutant Wanda. He's got to go, man. So the little nuclear clan here decided to take down Vision, and they blew the fuck out of him. He did live, but Wanda, I think the cover, Wanda's like hurling her fist in the air and like, "You killed the man I love, now you'll all die," that kind of thing. So say Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, and that's a great issue. Still great issue. Great art by Bob Brown. Great story by Steve Englehart. So that cemented me, man. I was like so happy for them, and I followed their love affair, and they got married, and they moved to suburbia for a couple of miniseries in the 80s. Somehow through weird magical such and such, Wanda even got pregnant and had twin kids. Now, This is like the mid 80s. So let's flash forward 35 years. And hold on. This stuff's good. So now we have a series called WandaVision. In the MCU, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, when both these characters were introduced in the second Avengers film, Age of Ultron, which drew heavily on my favorite eras of the Avengers, as written by Roy Thomas and Steve Englehart. Because it seemed like the first movie was going to kind of, I don't know if this is the right way to put it, pander to the big guns. And the big guns in the Avengers have always been the big three: Captain America, Thor, and Iron Man. That's been true of the comics, and it's carried over to the movies. Just like Wolverine was the most popular X-Man in the comics, and he turned out to be the most popular character, and Jackman the most popular actor in the X-Men films. So Marvel knows what they're doing with the casting. They know who to get to embody that level of that iconic level. They've been very shrewd a number of times here. Cap, Iron Man, Thor, that's kind of their bread and butter with the Avengers. And 45 years ago in Marvel Comics, it was all about Captain America, Thor. Vision and Wanda were kind of outliers. They were kind of what made the Avengers like a family place where misfits who didn't belong anywhere else, didn't have their own big comic books, went. People like Hawkeye, is another good example. Wanda's brother Quicksilver, a number of others during the Wanda Vision big love affair period. There was another couple, the Swordsman and Mantis, also killer characters. Very brief period. Steve Englehart, great books. I have almost a complete run of Avengers, and I've been selling a lot of my really older ones lately. I just sold Avengers number 2 for $250 plus shipping. It's only in like 1.5 grade condition, but it's fucking Avengers number 2. I didn't want to sell it because I actually liked the issue. Great Kirby artwork, and the Hulk was a member then. But I just sold it. I need to sell as much as I can. So I've sold all my pre-Roy Thomas Avengers, or I've put them up on eBay to sell. He had a long run from like the mid-30s to like issue 103, I think, and I have all but maybe 5 or 6 of those issues. I did sell the first appearance of the Vision. I think I sold it for about $250 also a few months ago. That was the only copy I had. The other ones I've been selling from that run are ones I had duplicates of. I have up for sale, if anyone's interested, I have a really nice copy signed by Roy Thomas of issue 87, The Origin of the Black Panther. First time ever really told, other than the little bit we get in the Fantastic Four 50, whatever, that he was introduced in, 52 maybe. That book is going for like, the Avengers 87 is going for like anywhere from $150 to $400. So right now I think I have it around $175. It's not mint, but it's in good shape. 87, by the way, has been a kind of a weird luck number for me for a number of years. So people are into numerology and such things like I am. 1987 was a key year in my life, and it's become a key year / story chapter in Flickr Street. Anyway, yeah. So I may have to end up selling the whole Roy Thomas run of Avengers. I'm very proud of them. I love them, but it's like I kind of feel like maybe I've gotten as much enjoyment out of the Vision, Black Panther, Hawkeye era that I can. That was kind of my Avengers, even though most of those books came out before I was old enough to read. Some of them before I was born. But I caught up with them later. When I was a kid, when I was learning how to read, it was books like the one I alluded to, where the Vision and Scarlet Witch are attacked by the racist, bigot bomb heads. So I'm getting to the point, I promise. I love the Vision and Scarlet Witch, And Marvel let this idiot named John Byrne completely fuck up the Vision and Scarlet Witch continuity and love story and marriage and family, and it's never been the same since. They've never really gotten back together as a couple since then. I mean, Vision kind of recovered and got some of his old self back because John Byrne had him very cynically dissected down to the computer microcircuitry level, and then it was revealed that he really wasn't the original Human Torch, which we'd been told by Englehart that he was, because original Human Torch seemed human. That's why he was called the Human Torch, but he was a synthezoid. He was a synthetic human, an android. So the Vision was also. The Vision had red skin, and he had like a solar battery on his head, which in the movies they changed to like one of the Infinity Gems. But he was organic. That's why he was anatomically correct. That's why he could have sex with one. The movie Vision is somewhat organic that way, but he's a little bit more machine-like internally. But he is apparently anatomically correct and have sex with Wanda. So, getting back to that Age of Ultron movie. So, the Vision was his origin was kind of it was messed around with because originally, let's talk about the comics for a few minutes, and then we'll get into back to Age of Ultron, and then we'll get into Infinity War, and then we'll finally, maybe an hour or two from now, get into this damn WandaVision show. I may need to get a refill though at some point here. The Vision was created by a giant robot. Not giant robot like Transformer size, but he was like 8 feet, whatever. A big robot called Ultron, which had been created by Hank Pym. Henry Pym was also known as Goliath, Giant Man, Ant-Man, Yellow Jacket. He changed identities a lot. He had the growth power. He could get really big or really small. Now, of course, at the time when the Age of Ultron movie was developed, Pym was not yet a character in the MCU. Now, of course, he's a superbly realized character as played by Michael Douglas. Total aces on his portrayal of Pym. And kudos for them for making Pym like a 70-year-old guy who was actually a superhero, the original Ant-Man in the 80s, 35 years earlier than present day. It's a good analog to, Pym being Ant-Man in the 1960s and then Scott Lang being the second Ant-Man in the 1980s. So I really liked Ant-Man pretty well, but I really, really liked Ant-Man in the Wasp. So in the theater, I enjoyed it a lot. And as a lifelong Hank Pym fan, I've really enjoyed Douglas's portrayal. So since they didn't have Douglas and Pym yet, they couldn't have him create Ultron. So that changed the whole dynamic tremendously. No longer did you have Pym being Ultron's father and hence Vision's grandfather. No input from Pym, but they did have some scientists, just happened to have some scientists laying around in the Avengers who were brilliant, Tony Stark and Bruce Banner. So they took the Jarvis AI, which was introduced in the Iron Man movies. So instead of a real life butler, he was like a AI Man Friday for Tony. They took the Jarvis imprint, which of course brought with it Paul Bettany's voice, and they made Ultron a creation of Tony and Bruce. And Ultron took the Jarvis AI and created a body around it and used the power of Wanda, which was tapping into the Infinity Stone that they had, which I believe is the one they got from Loki's spear. And I can't remember which Infinity Stone it was. Maybe the Mind Stone, maybe, that's right. And this combination of inputs created the Vision. So Paul Bettany actually in the flesh played the Vision with Jarvis's voice. And as they point out in Infinity War, there's many overlays to the Vision, and maybe you could take out the Mind Stone and still have what makes Vision Vision, because by then he was a fully realized sentient being. And they make it a point that he's a sentient being, you know, that he has gained sentience. Um, a lot of it's probably in the movies, part of the Mind Stone. In the comics, it's like he kind of organically becomes sentient. You know, he had the imprint of Human Torch. He was a very human android, and he had the brain patterns of the deceased, for a while deceased hero villain Wonder Man. So he had a lot of human inputs to his synthezoid body that was reconnoitered by Ultron into what became the Vision. So you know they adapted it as best they could with what they had to work with. Then they jury rigged it, so to speak. They moved the parts around until they came up with pretty good analog to the comics origins, sans Henry Pym. So we had the Vision. Now, of course, we also had Wanda, and she was working for Ultron along with her brother, twin brother Quicksilver. So they were kind of villainous. They had been discovered as being enhanced humans by Baron Strucker and Hydra. I'm going to mention him again later. So that's where we were at with Age of Ultron. Quicksilver dies, saving Hawkeye. Vision and Scarlet Witch, or Wanda. I don't know if they've really called her Scarlet Witch completely in the movies. Maybe in the credits, but I don't know if in the actual movie scripts they have yet. So Wanda Maximoff, which she did have a last name, and that name was given her in the comics in the 80s, last name. They became Avengers. And so the next time you see them as full-fledged Avengers, it's been a couple years on in our time and in MCU time, and they're serving with distinction in the Avengers. And you come to Captain America Civil War, which came out in 2016, I believe. So that went in the theater a few times. One of my favorite Marvel ones. In that one, they begin to nudge things in the direction of an attraction between Wanda and the Vision. And it was really nice. It was very resonant. It brought back those feelings from when I was a kid. Of Wanda, you know, Vision and the Scarlet Witch, Team Supreme. So fast forward to 2018, we had Avengers Infinity War, the third Avengers proper movie, really the fourth if you count Civil War. I'm going to get another of these, but first I'm going to wrap up this Civil War treatise. Well, no, we're already past Civil War. So we're on to Infinity War, 2018. And Infinity War was a great movie. I saw that one 2 or 3 times in the theater, too. Still love it. I've seen it several times since. It's even in my queue now as something I want to rewatch in the near future. In this, we see that 2 years on from the events of Civil War, even though Wanda and Vision are ostensibly on opposite sides of the Tony Cap schism that drives Civil War, they are having an affair, a long-distance affair. They both can fly, so they fly and hook up in different cities along the way, because Wanda's like a fugitive along with Cap and the Black Widow and the Falcon. And in other words, the ones that didn't sell out like Tony and company did. Vision was one of the ones who sold out. But he had his reasons. He believed there was a logic for this. But he couldn't stay away from Wanda. So there's not a lot of material there, but their whole stolen moment kind of affair with a minimum of dialogue and a lot of conviction brings across where they're at with things. That they have fallen in love. They're a couple, even though they're ostensibly on 2 sides because of these fucking Sokovia Accords, because of Baron Zemo's, Helmut Zemo's false flag incident blasting the Wakandan embassy, killing T'Challa's father. If you haven't seen any of these movies, I know you're going to be completely lost. I'm hoping you have some recognition of what I'm because this it's a lot to unpack. Unfortunately, Infinity War kind of ends in tragedy for Wanda and Vision kind of sacrifices himself because he gives up the Mind Stone in order to stop Thanos from collecting it and adding it to his little gauntlet of stones, which is change the universe. So they lose, and Wanda is her power has grown and grown, and she's able to kind of keep Thanos at bay and try to preserve Vision, but she's not successful. And when Thanos snaps his finger and obliterates like a quarter or whatever, or half of all living beings in the universe, Wanda goes. Vision, of course, is already been destroyed. Wanda comes back in Avengers Endgame. She's mad at Thanos for taking Vision away. So she's back with the Avengers, and they all mourn, the loss of Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff. Spoilers if you haven't seen Endgame. You might be one of only 3 humans who haven't, because it's a top-grossing film in the history of celluloid. I'll be honest, I didn't see Endgame in the theater. I've seen it 3 times, but I never saw it in the theater. I was going to go on a massive date with my ex-fiance to see it the Friday that Friday, but she left on a Tuesday. So that didn't come to fruition. So I saw it on my buddy's Plex account. My buddy Dwayne Cochran. Shout out to Dwayne Cochran. Been my friend since 1992. 1993. Amazing guy. He lives in Burlington, North Carolina, which ironically my mom grew up in, and my aunt still lives there. Thanks to Dwayne, I've seen a lot of movies and TV series. And I'll get into that more in my next TV episode. He put up WandaVision yesterday. But thanks to Tim Tolbert, I'd actually already seen the first 2. So that's where we're left. We're left with the fallout of Endgame, which is that there is no Vision in the MCU. He's gone. Wanda is alone and depressed. So when I heard that there's a WandaVision series, I'm like, how are they going to bring Vision back? When is this going to take place? What's it going to be like? I want you to hold that thought while I get another adult beverage, and I will be right back. Listening to some ambient music here in the background. I forgot the name of this art. Robert Turman, I think is the name of this artist. Flux. Really cool album. So now I can kind of sit down and get situated with why I'm ostensibly here, which is talk about WandaVision. It's only taken 40 minutes to get to it. No one can accuse me of not cutting to the chase. So WandaVision, the premise as I sussed it out was it's going to be a parody of sitcoms throughout the years with Wanda and Vision as this kind of paradigmatic suburban couple. But of course, unlikely humor arising from them being an android and a witch. She's not a mutant in the movies, by the way. At least not yet. So I thought that was kind of cool, and it reminded me of the 80s miniseries I read. By the way, I'm selling all of my 80s Vision and Scarlet Witch miniseries on eBay. That's a total of 16 issues for $100. So you guys should get it now. While the iron is hot, I advise you to text me, comment below and claim your copies of the complete Vision Scarlet Witch miniseries that big chunks of this TV series were based on. $100 plus $5 shipping. So anyway, I watched WandaVision. I was hoping it would have some strains of the stories from the 80s, the suburban set stories with the Vision and Scarlet Witch, left the Avengers and were kind of hanging out in suburbia and married bliss, I guess. So it does. A lot was made of the fact also that some or all of the series was going to be shot in black and white, emulate old black and white sitcoms. Here's my take on this. Based on interviews I've read and a lot of the promotional materials and just watching the two existing episodes that we have in front of us. WandaVision is Wanda and the Vision. She's a witch. He's an android. They live in suburbia. They're weird. They're quirky. Whatever. She's kind of a witch in suburbia, a la Bewitched. I Dream of Jeannie. And actually, the opening credits to episode 2 are a complete pastiche of the opening cartoon credits of Bewitched, the old series. So that's where the humor comes in, and it is funny. It's funny because some of it actually is funny, but also it's funny because there's a knowing nudge nudge wink wink humor to it, that we know those comedic tropes from growing up with shows like I Dream of Jeannie and Bewitched, or having knowledge of them if we're too young to have actually experienced them, or maybe we've seen them in reruns. I'm not old enough to have experienced either of those shows firsthand, just barely too young, but I mean, I started seeing them in syndicated reruns from the time I was taught. So they've always been within my awareness. I've seen every episode of umpteen times. And they're two of the only series from that era that still hold up for me. They're still pretty cute and funny. But so there's a lot of Bewitched there. The witch in suburbia, that kind of goes back to Bell Book and Candle and things that influenced Bewitched. The hapless human married to the witch. Though in this case it's the hapless android married to the witch. So he's got his own quirky fish out of water thing. So they're both kind of hiding in suburbia trying to fit in. And they know they're weird. They love each other. They accept each other, but they're not sure everyone else will. So they kind of are keeping it on the down low, the true nature of both of them. The thing is, within the story, within the film show itself, WandaVision, they're not aware of how they got there. And they don't really remember when they got married, when they met. All this comes through in a little side story where they entertain Vision's boss and his wife at home, and there's lots of hijinks with trying to cook them dinner using her magic powers because there's been a misunderstanding, and Wanda thinks that the special occasion is their wedding anniversary, which she can't remember because they never have established one. So she's like trying to dress kind of sexy for Vision. And then this really square couple pops up, and so she's got to like reconnoiter really fast. And finally, it comes out okay, but there's these kind of weird things happening along the fringes. There's a voice that's talking to Wanda, like, "Where are you, Wanda?" or "Wake up, Wanda," or whatever. From the promo materials, what I've gleaned is the voice is that of Jimmy Woo, who was a character in the second Ant-Man film, Ant-Man and the Wasp. And in the comic books, Jimmy Woo is a longtime agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. I think he might work for S.H.I.E.L.D. in the movies. I think he works for the government. He has something to do with Scott Lang, Ant-Man, being rehabilitated, being on probation or parole or whatever after the events of Civil War, because he also kind of went against the grain, dared go against, the almighty Sokovia Accords and Tony Stark. So Jimmy Woo's back, and he's the one who's trying to shake Wanda. Now, where is she? Is she like, is her physical body somewhere imprisoned by Shield, or what's left of Shield, or the government, or some other kind of covert organization? And this whole sitcom thing is happening in her mind. And is Vision then truly still dead? Has her magic brought Vision back to life? Willed this thing to be? And so it actually kind of physically is happening, but that reality is fraying around the edges. That's what I'm getting as the message of it. But she is becoming gradually aware that something's wrong. And if you look at the trailers, she does confide this to Vision. Now, this whole series is not going to be black and white. The first episode is kind of I Love Lucy-ish in its time frame in the 50s, black and white, 50s to late 50s, early 60s. Second episode is black and white, but she's in like pants now. It's a little bit more like the 60s, so it's a little bit more like the Dick Van Dyke Show with her kind of like the Mary Tyler Moore, Laura Petrie wife character. And at the end of episode 2, it goes to color. Color has like bled into occasional scenes, and that's a deliberate fun on my part when you see the show. But by the end of episode 2, they're in color. So we're going to move into, I guess, the 70s and probably go into like the later Bewitched that was in color, later I Dream of Jeannie that was in color template. I guess as we go toward the 80s, we're going to hit some 80s sitcom conventions. I do know that either episode 3 or 4 will introduce. We've already introduced their neighbor Agnes. So Agnes is also going to change through the years. Her fashion, her personality, go along with the changing sitcom style and look of each episode as we move forward through the decades. That's been established through interviews that I've read. Okay, so other than Agnes, the other major character, Agnes Jimmy Woo, another major character is Monica Rambeau, whose character we last saw in the MCU in the movie Captain Marvel. She was just a little kid. Her mom was best friends with Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel. In the comic books, Monica Rambeau was known for a while as the second Captain Marvel. There's been several in the comics. Carol's like the fifth, I think. But she was the first after Marvel, the original Marvel one. Now there was an original Captain Marvel in the comic books, two different publishers, Fawcett and DC. We know now know him as Shazam. Man, I'm gonna have to try to get this straight. So Monica Rambeau will be introduced, and I'm not sure if she's going to be a neighbor or a friend of Wanda or whatever. But they're going to move her into the main stage of the MCU, I'm sure, after WandaVision wraps. This will be the beginnings. Another MCU character that we've seen before, like Jimmy Woo, that we're going to see, Kat Dennings, everyone's favorite crush from, what's that show called? Two Broke Girls. She's kind of a cute, flaky girl, black hair, and very voluptuous chick. But she was in the first two Thor movies as Darcy Lewis or Darcy somebody. A character unique to the films, but she worked for Jane Foster, Natalie Portman's character. Now with the Natalie Portman coming back for Thor: Love and Thunder or whatever, I don't know if Darcy will be coming back to that or not, but apparently her role in this, from interview I saw with her, it's going to be a slightly different role, and I'm trying to speculate, does she work for the same organization that Jimmy Woo does? Is she in on this weird reality altering thing that WandaVision is? How does she relate to this? Kat Dennings hinted that she's going to be her own boss now instead of working for Jane, that she's kind of learned a lot. But she's obviously an intelligent girl, albeit kind of ditzy and shallow a little bit. Horny, towards Thor, if we remember from the first Thor movie. But she's a funny character. I like Kat Dennings. She's cute. And the thing is, in the interview I saw with her, which was just a couple of days ago, on-camera interview with the cast, she actually knows her Marvel shit. I mean, she's a Marvel Universe fan. I mean, she name dropped the phrase Marvel Universe, not just MCU. So she definitely knows the movies, but she may even know the comics or seem to know the comics and like them. So that's kind of cool. So she's a little more invested than some actors are into this stuff. But anyway, so with episode 2, to wrap that up, there's a lot of Easter eggs. I mean, there's some in episode 1, obviously. I mean, anybody who's watched the movies or read the comics are going to see some things. Episode 2 is pretty heavy, Easter egg heavy. There's Bova milk, which is shown in the background, which Bova was a evolved female, evolved cow, evolved by the High Evolutionary, and she was the midwife who brought Wanda and Pietro, the babies, into this world. And that's pretty much canonical, even though they've changed who their parents are 4 times, solid 4 times, as to who their actual parents are, and even a couple times as to what their true nature is. Whether they've been mutants most of the time, but now they're not. But they're more like the movies, sort of. I think they're like Inhumans or something. Inhumans was going to be like the go-to enhanced race in the MCU because they didn't have the rights to mutants. That was for the Vox X-Men series, shows and movies. Since mutants will be in Marvel now, who knows? Maybe Wanda and Pietro will end up becoming. Speaking of Pietro, a lot of people were asking whether Pietro was going to come back in some capacity, flashback, resurrection, whatever. And apparently, the guy who played Pietro in Age of Ultron, I forgot the actor's name. I wasn't a fan. I didn't particularly like his look, his acting, or that particular take on Pietro, other than the closeness with Wanda and he has super speed. Those were accurate, but everything else is like, Quicksilver is always kind of a hothead, kind of an asshole, overprotective of Wanda to the point of incestuousness. None of that was in Age of Ultron. Now, of course, Quicksilver became a popular cinematic character in the last 3 X-Men films, as portrayed by Evan Peters from American Horror Story. And that Quicksilver was even less like Quicksilver was in the comics, except for his powers. He was more of a happy-go-lucky prankster kind of character. But in one sense of accuracy, he was Magneto's son. And for many years, canonically in Marvel, Magneto was the father of the twins, Wanda and Pietro. I don't know if Magneto will end up being Wanda and Pietro's father in the MCU with the supposed eventual migration of the X-Men to the MCU, which I'm personally not in favor with, but whatever. But I haven't read anything confirming this yet, but I've heard things and read a few things that point in the direction that Quicksilver will be, in some capacity, appear in WandaVision, but will be played by Evan Peters, who played him in the Fox X-Men movies. So that's kind of like, if that's true, then we're kind of merging these universes and setting the stage for mutants and X-Men to gradually be assimilated into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Who knows what's going to happen. But it'd be kind of neat, though, especially if their dynamic was a little more like the comic books. Even if not, I still prefer Evan Peters to the other guy. In every way, really. Even though, I can't say the other guy had a personality more like Pietro's, because really he had zero personality. So by default, Evan Peters was more like Quicksilver, just with the speed and the silver hair and the Magneto son deal. even though really nothing else about him biographically matched up. I mean, his mom was different. He had a little sister, and it wasn't Wanda, and some people theorized it was Lorna Dane, but it was never clarified. But then Lorna Dane was shown in the X-Men Gifted TV series as supposedly Magneto's daughter, but no actual confirmation as to her family per se, at least not in the handful of terrible episodes I watched. She was one of the better things about the show, but they couldn't even get her green hair on point, so go figure. So that's WandaVision, episodes 1 and 2. So what's the deal? More Easter eggs before I wrap that up. There's an extended gag about Vision and Scarlet Witch doing a magic act for the suburban community here under the names Glamour and Illusion, Wanda being Glamour and Vision. And in the second Vision of Scarlet Witch miniseries in the 80s, written by good old Steve Englehart again, Glamour and Illusion were two characters. They were neighbors, I believe, of Wanda and Vision, and they did have a magic act, and the female was Glamour, the male was Illusion. So they've kind of conflated their neighbors, Glamour and Illusion, with they themselves, Wanda and Vision, in the suburbs. Also, at the end of this episode, Wanda is revealed to be pregnant, miraculously. That also happened in the Steve Englehart series. And I think I've seen a still where there's going to be two children, twins. So, and then you're probably gonna find out that it's all an illusion, and the twins aren't real, which that happened in the shitty John Byrne comics. So I guess that at least will be faithful to that too, and will be another kind of Easter egg slash homage slash sideways adaptation. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of potential. It's just at the very beginning. This could go any number of ways, but I like it cinematically. I like the nods to the old TV styles. I like the humor. I like the quirkiness of it. Even the stuff that's obvious and cheesy can be read as satire of those original sitcoms. So I'm very hopeful. I'm impressed. I love these characters. I love these actors as these characters. Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. I've loved them in however many movies they've been in together, and I think for these kind of characters who are a little more deeper cut kind of Avengers than the super popular big three: Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and of course the Hulk. Not even as well known as the Black Widow. Third tier to most people, but to me, they're first tier. To me, they are the Avengers because that's what I grew up with, and to me, this is resonant. And seeing them live action and treated this way it's exciting. And so I'm hopeful for the Disney Plus series, and I'm hoping that they don't go too far afield and fuck up. There's a lot of things they're juggling, a lot of productions, a lot of things on their plate, with Disney and with the fact that theater going has subsided with COVID. All kind of things could go wrong, and they no longer have Chris Evans or Robert Downey Jr. to star power to carry a lot of things on, even though they still have Mark Ruffalo and Chris Hemsworth, thank goodness. I did hear a rumor that Chris Evans, a rumor that will definitely be returning as Steve Rogers somehow in the future. I don't know. I don't believe it till I get more confirmation. I also heard that possibly Tony Stark will be back. Now, of course, he does appear in the Black Widow movie, which has been delayed for quite a while because of the plague of last year. As far as I know, that's his last appearance as Tony Stark, but people are claiming that he's going to appear as an AI character or a hologram mentor to this character Ironheart, which is supposed to be, the legacy Iron Man series that's going to be on Disney Plus in 2022. I don't really care one way or another about Ironheart in the comics. It just doesn't interest me. So I don't know. I don't have an opinion one way or another about that or about Downey appearing in it. he's still going to be dead, so it really doesn't really matter moving forward whether he makes an appearance as a hologram or not. WandaVision, I'm hoping at the end somehow Vision will be alive. And they're setting up some different possibilities between Wanda's magic powers, this other reality, and the precedents for these stories in the comics, both good and bad comics, which they're drawing from. I mean, quality-wise, they know their material and they're tapping into it, and I really like the thought that seems to have gone into this, and the fact that it's something different, while still honoring these great characters. It's very character centric, and I think that's one thing that makes Marvel movies and made Marvel comics in its classic era mean so much to those of us who grew up on them and love them. So with that, I wish you a cheers. I'm going to finish this off, wrap up this video. May or may not make another one as I slide further into intoxication. I'm not really there yet, just very mildly buzzed, but it's helped me get through this. I've enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you got the gist of what I think of WandaVision. I hope you maybe learned something about things behind the scenes with the show, and also with the comic characters and their beginnings, and all kinds of tangents and digressions I went on. So I will talk to everybody soon. Thank you so much. I'm going to be going more into different kinds of videos soon with the music stuff, and we'll be doing another TV musings, if I choose to call it that, episode very soon, because I got a lot to say about some other shows. But I wanted to get WandaVision out of the way while it was new and fresh, and add my voice to the deafening roar, the ominous din of voices, discussing it. I figured, well, there's going to be a lot of news about this show. It's new. The ratings apparently are already incredible. But I mean, if Screen Rant and Bleeding Cool and CBR and YO9 can wax whatever about the show, then I think after being into these characters for over 40 years, I've earned the right to do the same for an hour of your time. So thank you. Take care, and I will see you soon.